Most people believe emotional dependency begins with love, but that is usually not how it starts. In many cases, emotional dependency begins with emotional relief. The human mind naturally moves toward people who temporarily reduce fear, uncertainty, loneliness, or emotional discomfort. At first, the connection feels safe, comforting, even healing, but over time, emotional stability may slowly become attached to a single person. Their attention begins affecting mood. Their absence begins affecting emotional balance. Their approval begins shaping self-worth. And eventually, the emotional system may stop seeking connection and start seeking regulation, because emotional dependency does not appear instantly. It often develops through recognizable psychological stages. And once the later stages begin, separation can start feeling emotionally destabilizing. This is the evolution of emotional dependency. Stage 1. Emotional comfort. In the beginning, the connection feels harmless. The person feels understood, safe, emotionally lighter. Conversations create relief. Attention creates comfort. Emotional stress temporarily decreases in the presence of the other person. At this stage, most people still feel emotionally independent. Their life continues normally. Their routines remain stable. But subtle psychological reinforcement may already be forming beneath the surface. The brain starts associating emotional relief with a specific individual. Their presence begins carrying emotional weight. Their messages begin affecting mood. Their attention starts feeling unusually important. The difficult part is that stage 1 rarely feels dangerous. It feels comforting, which makes the attachment harder to recognize. Stage 2. Attachment prioritization. By stage 2, emotional attention begins shifting disproportionately toward one person. The individual slowly becomes the emotional center of the mind's focus. Thoughts become more frequent. Emotional dependence becomes more subtle. The person may begin reorganizing routines, priorities, and emotional energy around the relationship itself. Their approval carries more psychological impact. Their absence creates stronger emotional reactions. The brain begins prioritizing emotional connection over emotional stability, because attachment can temporarily reduce uncertainty, and the human mind naturally seeks emotional predictability. At this stage, emotional balance may already begin depending on external reassurance, which slowly weakens internal emotional regulation. The concerning part is that many people mistake this stage for deep emotional connection, when in reality, dependency and intimacy are not always the same thing. Stage 3. Emotional reliance. By stage 3, the emotional system begins relying heavily on the relationship for stability itself. Mood becomes reactive. Silence creates anxiety. Delayed responses create overthinking. Emotional reassurance becomes psychologically necessary, because the brain may begin associating emotional safety with continuous validation. The relationship slowly transforms into an emotional regulation mechanism. Attention becomes calming. Distance becomes destabilizing. The person may begin monitoring tone, behavior, and communication patterns constantly. Small changes suddenly feel emotionally significant. At this stage, emotional dependency often becomes difficult to recognize objectively, because the attachment feels emotionally necessary, not optional. And once emotional stability becomes externally dependent, separation may begin triggering emotional distress automatically. Stage 4. Fear of loss. By stage 4, the fear of losing the connection begins shaping behavior itself. Anxiety increases. Emotional hypervigilance develops. Overthinking intensifies. The person may begin suppressing needs, emotions, or boundaries to preserve the relationship, because emotional dependency often transforms connection into emotional survival. Rejection feels amplified. Distance feels threatening. Uncertainty becomes emotionally exhausting. The nervous system begins anticipating abandonment constantly. At this stage, emotional stability may become increasingly fragile, because the emotional system is no longer operating independently. It is operating conditionally, dependent on reassurance, attention, presence, and over time, the fear of emotional loss may become stronger than the relationship itself. Stage 5. Identity fusion. In the final stage, emotional dependency may begin affecting identity itself. The person slowly loses emotional separation between self-worth and attachment. Personal stability weakens. Emotional independence decreases. The relationship becomes psychologically fused with identity. Their validation defines confidence. Their distance defines insecurity. Their presence defines emotional safety. And eventually, the emotional system may stop functioning independently altogether. This is what makes emotional dependency psychologically dangerous over long periods of time. It gradually weakens internal emotional regulation. The person begins adapting to emotional reliance as a permanent condition. And adaptation can feel deceptively normal, stable, familiar, necessary. Because once emotional dependency becomes identity, separation may no longer feel like emotional pain. It may begin feeling like psychological collapse. And that may be one of the most dangerous stages of all. Because the human mind can adapt to emotional imbalance surprisingly well. Especially when attachment becomes confused with survival. Human behavior evolves in patterns. Emotional systems adapt in stages. And the mind often changes itself long before people consciously recognize the attachment forming beneath the surface. ArchiveNeural. Observe. Analyze. Understand.